So this is OTT workflow integration best practices. And I originally thought up this panel because someone said to me, you know, clients come to me and they want to know which vendor to work with. And the problem is there's no easy button. So at least today we'll have a chance to talk about a little bit of the things that people do to make it a little bit easier. I have asked the panelists to introduce themselves as well. You know those questions that people come up with that are challenge questions for your password? Well, I asked them to focus on a streaming question so that when they came up and had to create a new question, this is what it would be. Take it away. We'll first introduce Rema. Rema.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Rema Morgan-Aluko, and I'm the Director of Software Engineering for the FandangoNOW team. We have a plethora of different videos and TV shows available for rent and buy, over, I think, 80,000 different movies. And as I was thinking about this question about what my favorite security question would be, and I thought maybe my question would be, what was the first FFmpeg command you learned? I thought that'd be cool. And if I tell you what the answer is, I don't think it'll be secure. So we'll let you think about your own FFmpeg command. Nice to meet you all. Happy to do this panel.
Perfect, Rema. Thank you. Let's see. Let's go to Michael next. Michael.
My name is Michael Bouchard. I am the VP of Technology Strategy for One Media, a subsidiary of Sinclair Broadcast Group. Sinclair has approximately 200 TV stations, 23 regional sports networks, tennis channels, Stir, and lots of other digital properties. If you were going to ask, you know, this question, at first glance, I was thinking my favorite ATSC 3.0 service, which would be targeted information. But since many of you may not know, let's just talk about the favorite high definition resolution. We're pushing for HDR10.
Okay, favorite 8. Cool. All right. So, Magnus, how about you? What will you introduce yourself and let us know what your question might be?
Yeah, my name is Magnus Svensson. I work at Eyevinn Technology as a streaming media specialist, helping customers with vendor selection, due diligences, strategical and technical advice. The question, I'm usually not good at remember things. I wanted something easy, so I went for what is your favorite streaming protocol? And I picked HLS. It's 3 letters. I should be able to remember that one.
Okay. All right, great. Geir, how about you?
Hi, my name is Geir Magnusson. I am the CTO of fuboTV. fuboTV is I guess a US-based virtual MVPD. We offer basically cable replacement. We're sports first, full entertainment offering, about 1,000 channels that we bring in and lots of VODs. I think my security question is, as terrible as I think the use of security questions are for authentication, would be in this day and age of an incredible abundance of sort of on-demand offerings, why is linear distribution still important? And I think the answer is soon to be again because of sports, certainly right now because of news, and then generally because of weather, things that are sort of in the moment, need to know right now, and contemporaneous.
Cool. All right. And our last panelist, Darren, how about you?
Thanks. I'm Darren Lepke. I'm the head of video product management at Verizon Media. We offer B2B services for folks like fuboTV and Sinclair. You know, we have a kind of core CDN offering. We have a video streaming platform, and today we power many of the largest OTT services in the market today, including ESPN, Fox Sports, Discovery, and more. So in terms of my security question, I did a quick look at my phone today, and my question would be, how many OTT apps do I have downloaded to my phone? And the number is 23. which is not a super secure answer. So if I had to pick my favorite app in my phone, I'd have to say the tennis channel, because that is a service that we power today.
All right, very cool. And you're not just saying that because Michael's on the call.
Absolutely not. I'm watching tennis right now, in fact.
You are? You're not paying attention to us? Okay. So, you know, for us, one of the first questions for everybody here that we thought we'd look at is, you know, what is a workflow? Or, you know, what workflows do you have? Because realistically, when we look at best practices for OTT workflows, we first want to kind of cover what it is that people are using as workflows. And so let's see, Darren, you're still up on the screen. So why don't we ask you first, do you have a workflow that you talk about? Or is that not really the way you discuss things?
Yeah, certainly for us, you know, when we think about workflows, we think about the types of content that, you know, our customers bring to the table. And for us, it's everything from on-demand files to linear channels that we have to pull, you know, straight off an IRD coming off a satellite, or, you know, from an IP source. And in some cases, it can be also be live events, whether it's, you know, an RTMP or RTSP feed coming in from an IP camera, or maybe something through SDI. So for us, a workflow means everything from the point of capture at the video source all the way through to delivery out to the end consumer device across our CDN.
Okay, all right. Now, hopefully each of you has a slightly different answer, only because otherwise we can't all say with the same thing. So, Geir, how about you? What specifically is your workflow that you're concerned with?
We have several, right? We do sort of linear acquisition, transcoding and distribution, VOD acquisition, transcoding and distribution, sort of the advertising workflow for server-side ad insertion. And then because we are direct-to-consumer product, we have a bunch of workflows in and around consumer acquisition, content promotion, and content sort of recommendation and similar. So
okay.
there's a wide array of them.
All right, very cool. And we'll be talking about some of those topics as we proceed. Michael, how about you, workflow?
Yeah, we also have quite a few different workflows. You know, you have our typical digital VOD workflows, our digital origination feeds that are both originated within our cloud and retrans from other folks like Cheddar, for instance. Linear over-the-air feeds, digital, what we call digital studio feeds, where there's a high, you know, DRM component involved. And all of these workflows, it's really important for us to make it easy for our producers. And so we work really hard to try to put them in a what appears to be a single workflow for our producers.
Okay, that's very cool that you have it as a single workflow that you call it. How about Magnus? What about you?
Yeah, as a consultant or a streaming media specialist, we don't have our own workflows, but I come across a lot of different workflows for my customers. It could be from startups where they basically they have content, but they don't have any workflow at all to work with, and I help those. But usually I come in where there are already legacy workflows in place. It could be VOD, it could be live, it could be media asset management, and whatever. And then we need to adapt and help the customer moving along. So I'm pretty used to most large and small scale workflows, and also all types of workflows that our customers are having.
Okay. Now, Rema, you're actually up next, and I think that you're an on-demand shop for the most part. Would you call it that? And whereas Magnus might be working with a variety of customers. How about you? What's your focus?
Yeah, so at FandangoNOW, we have long form content as well as short form content that we're processing. And so we have workflows for that. But not only that, across the rest of the Fandango properties, we also have original content from our Rotten Tomatoes group, and those things are kind of funneling to social media platforms. And so we have different workflows that can handle both short and long form at different types of speeds and efficiencies. We have captioning workflows, we have image proxy workflows. There's so many. And I think it's really important as we think about workflows kind of in later discussion, you know, that these workflows are really fine-tuned to the content and the locations where this content should be delivered for the customers.
Okay. All right. Now, in fact, I think, Rema, you were the one, while I still have you on the screen, you brought up in our planning conversation, Magnus just brought it up earlier, everyone has a legacy platform for the most part. And so I think what the question was is, when it comes to what you have, how do you know if your systems are effective? And I can see Michael on screen first. So Michael, you grab this.
With Sinclair, because we're a company of acquisitions, you know, we acquire these stations 1 or 2 at a time. We just acquired the 21 regional sports networks from Disney. And this is, Darren talked about Tennis Channel, that was a couple years ago. You know, this is continuous. It's a real challenge because all of those systems, just because you acquire something doesn't mean you replace all the systems. We would, you know, no one could afford to do that. And so for us, it's all about coming up with an integration platform to be able to integrate all of these disparate systems so that they can work in the entire ecosystem. And then as they come to end of life, that's when we standardize them with whatever the corporate system at the time is. Okay.
And, you know, you talked a little bit, I'm just going to jump in a little bit deeper here, Michael, before I cut you off. You mentioned something about how you acquire a lot of companies and you take their workflows in. What do you do with them as you still have them? Because you in terms of integrating them.
Well, we have an integration plane that we've developed. You know, it's nothing. It's not rocket science, right? It's just an event-driven integration plane that's run by defined finite state machines. Okay, so it's not that complex, and it's all about building adapters to whatever those systems are to go back and forth. So it might be an old Sundance system for an old TV station. Well, there's an RDBMS database there. You know, we can write adapters to go both in and out of that.
And so writing the adapters, it's custom for you. It's not something you're buying, right? That's something that you have to specifically work on.
Unless we have a very good vendor, yes.
Okay.
We tend to write them.
All right. All right. You know, Rema, I was going to kind of follow up with you also about the legacy workflows and how do you know, what it is that is working and, what is it that you, how do you measure whether it's effective?
Yeah, I really think that, when you have legacy technology, no matter what it is, workflows or any other thing, I think it's really important to make sure you're constantly evaluating your system to find out if it's meeting your needs. Your needs could be different depending on the type of content that you're delivering and the teams that you support or groups that you support. And so a couple things that we look at. We look at ease of modification. Is it possible for your team to make the modifications necessary to meet the needs of the group or the users of that workflow? If it takes a long time to get those things to market, maybe this system is no longer good enough for you. Maybe you want to look at spending some time to rebuild certain pieces, or maybe you want to take a look at what's out there in the market and determine whether or not it makes sense to continue to support this platform or purchase something that could be better. Another thing that you want to think about when you're evaluating legacy systems is, cost. Is this thing costing you money? Is there something out there that can do it better, can do it faster? Do you have the expertise in-house to make the modifications necessary, or are you paying for a support contract with the vendor? All of those things kind of go into play when you're thinking about legacy systems. I think it's a constant evaluation. I think all teams should, and all groups, organizations should monitor and really look at those issues and problems that come up, and always ask yourself these questions. Does it make sense to continue to support these platforms, or is there something out there that's better? Do I need to get a team in-house to do this? Can I outsource this? Can I use a consultant? Can I use a vendor? Can I buy something off the shelf? These are questions that you need to ask yourself continuously to make sure that you have the best systems to get your content out there to the consumers.
Okay, all right. And in fact, I'm sure this is something that Magnus likes to hear about replacing things. So Magnus, what do you do when it comes to evaluating or working with your customers?
I think I agree a lot with Rema there that you need to evaluate when it comes to cost and competence and all these things. And what we usually do is we usually use a blueprint model for the workflows and compare that to what the customer have and where they want to be. And then we can identify the components that needs to be replaced or changed or updated. And then we evaluate basically the criteria that Rema mentioned. It's cost, it's competence, it's complexity to replace, and sometimes it's not just swap and replace. It needs to be integration in a couple of places. So a blueprint is usually the best, because then you can use that for your own sake and also use that to explain to the customer or the people around and everything what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, and what are the complexities to do that.
Okay, you know, I'm going to ask you now. So what is your blueprint? How do you do it? Like,
we have developed our own blueprint that is basically a blueprint model of a streaming solution, both from acquisition down to the players, including the DRM, including ad insertion, including encoder, transcoding, delivery, and that model is basically a without vendor, without functionality. It's just these are the boxes needed for a streaming solution. So
it's kind of, if I can use the term, it's the workflow, right? And
it's a generic workflow for
a generic workflow
for VOD and live and all the things around that.
Okay, all right, good. That seems interesting. All right, so let's see. Darren, did you have any comments on this as well?
So, you know, I think efficiency is certainly something you want to consider when you're looking at integrating components. Certainly cost. That's another big thing. I think the other thing we want to think about as well is just the synergies that come, not to use an overused word, but the synergies that come when more of the platform is stitched together, right? So it's one thing to say, you know, I want to pull out an encoder here, or I want to plug in a CDN there. You know, that's pretty kind of straightforward in terms of the integration. We integrate with things like broadcast playout systems all the time, so we can ingest schedules and ad breaks, and like that makes a lot of sense. I think the other way to look at integration is, you know, the metrics, the data, the analytics that need to come out of your platform. A lot of those things are interrelated. They are connected, right? Your SSAI system is very much connected to your playout system and how well you deliver content and at what quality, right? So, you know, while it's great to have a fully modular kind of plug and play system, it's also important to have a system that hangs together, that can share data and ultimately integrate all of that data to, you know, kind of provide you the insights you need to, you know, bring on better ad partners or stream your video in different quality, or even, you know, start to do things like look at the content itself, like, you know, what content is, you know, performing the best, and you know, where should I change my investment in content licensing, for example.
Okay, so the data, that's an interesting kind of way to look at it, which I'm assuming that the data needs of everyone changes over time, especially as we have more and more data. Do people come to you with a data strategy?
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, that strategy matures over time as the business matures, right? So when we first, you know, started seeing the OTT services emerge maybe 10 years ago, you know, the most important data was, you know, what's my rebuffering ratio? How many users am I reaching? You know, kind of the core components of a workflow, just in terms of, you know, what's the quality of the content that's being streamed. Today, we're seeing businesses mature beyond just this initial phase of trying to make delivery work and into trying to understand what is profitable. So today, our customers are coming back to us and asking, you know, which of my ad partners, which of my SSAI, you know, ad decisioning partners is best performing? What are the profitability metrics that we can see across all of our content? Because the businesses themselves are maturing into this model where, you know, it's no longer just this fun little experiment. It's part of their core business. They're looking at profit and loss and need, you know, core business insights that, you know, a platform like we all operate can unlock.
Okay. So, you know, you're talking about stuff that is maybe for a bigger organization. We just got a question that came in through the chat about what happens if you are a smaller OTT platform and you want to deliver both to Roku and Amazon Fire TV? Is there any quick answers to this, just instead of taking this offline? Is that something that you guys work with, Darren?
Roku and Amazon Fire TV are both essential parts of the connected TV ecosystem. Between those two and Apple TV, that's where we see a bulk of the viewing today happening on connected TVs. So right. In terms of the tools to recommend to allow them to deliver, they're pretty straightforward in terms of the video format requirements. In terms of the application development frameworks, they're fairly well known. So my recommendation for a smaller provider would be, pick one, maybe start small, start with a kind of known existing framework that you can start to develop. Maybe poll your existing user base and understand where your viewers are today. And then, just start knocking them off one at a time. There's no need to try to launch with 2 or even 12, platforms all at once.
Okay. And I guess one of the things I would say too is that Roku has, I believe, a publisher program, pretty easy for people to get started on it as well. And I do know that I just held a workshop last week and I looked at Vimeo's products. They also have the ability to quickly and probably in a fairly cost-effective manner as well. There's going to be a lot of people out there who will do things for you. I think that, especially Darren, if you think of what's something that somebody who is starting up an OTT, what's the one question that they should think about? Is it, make sure that the analytics are going to come out of the system correctly, or what path would you go, just for the one intelligent question, whether it's asking you or another vendor?
So if I'm just launching a service, what's the one question I would ask?
Yeah.
Start with the users, right? If your users are of a certain age group or a certain demographic, they only watch their content on a certain device, like that's where you want to kind of vector your time and your effort. It speaks to your content strategy. Should you do long form or short form? Okay. Are live events more important? Like ultimately, where your users are and where the audiences that you're trying to target should be the very first question, and that should then direct you to the appropriate partners to help solve that. Right? There may be certain partners that are better at live versus linear channels versus on demand. There may be other partners who can get you better reach through non-traditional OTT methods. Maybe it's streaming on Instagram or YouTube first, and then as you build your audience, and then transition to an owned and operated app. So for me, the first question is always who's the audience, and what are they trying to consume.
Okay, very cool. Let's jump on to the next question, just because I want to cover a range of things, and making sure that people come back for other sessions that we're working on at Streaming Media East Connect, because some of the questions will be answered there as well. Geir, I'm going to go to you now, and I think we came up with this when we were chatting previously. If there are questions you would ask each other for advice about, or even just things you're curious about, what would you ask the others on this panel?
Good question. There's a lot of dimensions to what we do that at least are continuously new, but I think one of the most important to our business, certainly right now, is really optimizing sort of marginal revenue from advertising, right? Advertising is a very important part of our business. So maybe the questions I'd be asking the others in the group, others in the attending, is sort of what are some of the best server-side ad insertion practices? It's a complicated set of interactions between multiple systems, and it's important that it not go wrong, because at least certainly in the case of linear, once your ad avails are gone, they're gone. The inventory is you'll never see it again. You have to just keep it.
All right. And in fact, I know that two of you especially wanted to talk about this. So I have Mike, you were thinking about the ad insertion question, I think, when we talked about this earlier. What would you say to Geir about what you guys think about or what you know?
Yeah, ads are definitely a very important part of our digital revenue. We've run into the issue because we have so many different audiences on different devices and different advertisers that want to advertise on our networks, that we can't just take an SSAI approach. We actually support both client and server side depending on the situation. Mm-hmm. And we actually have some streams that do both interchangeably, which gets very interesting. And you tie that into, you know, live, like a live news broadcast. You've all seen live news broadcasts just appear. They don't listen for the ad pod to finish. So it's truly live. And so our ads, whether they're server side or client side, have to adapt to that. And that was a big challenge in the early days, working with Darren and his group.
Were you building it? So were you buying it? What, you know?
We thought we could buy it because we thought it seemed really, you know, everyone's showing ads, right? You watch the Super Bowl, you see ads, mm-hmm. But it turns out that's not truly live. They understand their pod size. The other thing that surprised me was finding out that for certain advertisers and certain programmatic ads, because of the analytics we get back, they pay a higher CPM for client side. Mm-hmm. So we're all proud rolling out this new platform that's all server side ads, and we have to turn half of it off because of the revenue.
Okay.
Very unexpected. And we're still running some of those today because we get a higher CPM.
Okay. All right.
So it really depends.
The money talks. Magnus, how about you? What were your comments on this area too, Geir?
I would usually say that for server-side insertion, preparation is key. You need to prepare the content coming in with markers and everything like that. You need to have slates and fillers prepared in case of backup. You need to have properly encoded ads coming in so you don't have a glitch in quality for the ads itself. If you're going live, I would say that be prepared for high peaks. Everybody's asking for ads at the same time. So preload and header bidding and these type of techniques to flatten the curve, so to say. In these days, it's pretty popular. So, but I would say that preloading and header bidding and preparation, be prepared, because if it's a live event, a lot of viewers will request ads at the same time. It will mm-hmm. be high peaks for the system. So what you can do in preparation is usually what gains and gets quality in the end.
Yeah,
okay.
Let me touch on a couple points there from what Michael and Magnus said. One, it's very true that server-side ad insertion and just the ad ecosystem online is very, very complicated. So that leads to a couple different challenges, right? I think when we talk about the CPMs, today server-side ad insertion really supports vast advertising and vast protocols. I think, client side still, supports VPaid and some of the interactivity there. That's where you see some of the higher CPMs. But I think with some of the kind of advancements in protocols around VAST 4.0, some of the kind of open measurement standards, some of the things that are coming online there. I think we're starting to see a little bit of rebalancing of those CPMs because you're starting to get more analytics from the server side. So that's certainly something to think about, and you ultimately also have to, understand the balance of inventory in your programmatic ad system or in your pre-sold ad system. If you only have VPaid ads and not VAST ads, that presents a challenge. So you have to also kind of look to your ad partner there as well. The second part of complexity you want to think about is, in the television ecosystem, it's very controlled in terms of how ad breaks are scheduled, the exact durations of ads inside of an ad pod on the internet. And especially when you're going out to kind of open exchanges or programmatic exchanges, if you request 30 seconds of ads, you don't always get exactly 30 seconds back. Sometimes you get 28, right. Sometimes you get 32, and you have to have a flexible system that can say, you know what, I'm going to allow my ad break to go 30 seconds and maybe my live stream is a little bit further behind live. So you can kind of flex your ad pods. You may make a decision to say, you know what, I'm going to chop the last ad, like right when we get to the 30-second break, I'm going to cut out of the ad no matter what and go back to live. And that may affect, you know, your completion rates and your revenue. And then you may also decide, you know what, if I get 32 seconds worth of ads, I'm just not going to show the last ad. I'm only going to do, you know, 20 seconds of ad and then show 10 seconds of slate. So it's a little more complicated. I think that will become a little less complicated over time as the industry kind of does some of the requirements for SSAI. And ultimately, it's about planning and understanding what's most important to you. Are you optimizing for revenue? Are you optimizing for latency? Are you optimizing for production quality? These are all the things you have to kind of consider when you're looking at best practices for SSAI.
All right, now, cool. I want to move you on to another topic because I want to make sure we cover things. But the next question was yours anyway. You know, are there certain things you would build or certain things you would buy? Was that the question, or can you paraphrase it for me? Or since it was your question.
Yeah, I think my question, coming from a service provider perspective and thinking about you know, integration strategies, my question is, you know, are there parts of your workflow from ingest to CMS to DRM to SSAI to CDM? Are there things that you are never going to buy? Are there things that you're always going to build? I know questions with never and always are always bad questions, but you know, are there things maybe less likely that that you would outsource or secure from an outside vendor?
Okay, so and I think everyone was kind of into kind of responding to this question. Rema, I think you had some thoughts first on this. What would you always buy, or what would you never buy?
Yeah, you know, never is so strong.
Okay,
You never want
I
to say
won't say
never to
never.
anything, but
Sure.
I would say that I think this is mainly about your team and your team's expertise. If you have a team that is that has a lot of experience in a particular area, maybe those are the things you don't want to outsource. Those are the things you want to kind of put towards the never side of the spectrum. At FandangoNOW, we have apps on many different platforms. And so we have a reasonably sized group of engineers who kind of, their bread and butter is building apps. Their bread and butter is building workflows, DRM solutions, things like that. And those things we wouldn't want to outsource. But for the different types of content that we provide, maybe we'll be looking to buy CMS tooling that allows for groups to enter metadata in content and make sure that that metadata is processed and sent to all the different locations, the YouTubes, the social medias, maybe the pipelines that go to owned and operated properties. Maybe that's something we keep in-house. But really, I think just taking a step back from it, my thought around it is where's my expertise? What is core to my business? If something is core to my business, maybe that's something that I want to make sure I keep internal. And if something is not core to my business and there's something else that can do it better, faster, cheaper, then I'm going to do that. Okay. You know, it's just a constant cycle on that.
All right. I know that, Michael, you actually also had kind of the approach that there's a lot of things you would and a lot of things you wouldn't. So why don't you give us your thoughts?
Yeah. So at Sinclair, we have, you know, video going out on many, many distribution channels, data coming in. And there's no one tool that we could buy to kind of handle that. If there was, we would. But there's things like the smooth ad return that Darren was talking about. We've had to write that ourselves. That's something we still can't buy, but I expect that that's something we're going to be able to buy pretty soon. Magnus was talking about pre-positioning of ads. With our next gen TV that we're doing now with ATSC 3.0, we are pre-positioning ads. But since that's a brand new technology, we had to write everything ourselves, right? There are no vendors, or the heritage TV vendors don't have that implemented yet. And so we're always in a situation where we have to build quite a lot. We don't want to really have to build anything. because we want to just concentrate on producing content and distributing it.
Okay. And in fact, I know that Magnus likes to hear people want to build things. So Magnus, how about you? What are your comments on this?
I would like to tag along with Rema there. It depends a lot on where you come from and what are your competences. But I would say that the device flora that's out there, especially smart TVs, is usually very complicated to keep track of, verify all the flows and verify all the versions of the smart TVs and everything like that. So that is usually one of the recommendations we come with, that if you're not strong in device certification development, stay away from smart TV apps and outsource that to someone that can do the scale out of it and do proper verification on all models and operating systems.
Okay, all right. And in fact, I am going to go a little bit back to one of the things that Rema brought up, which was, Rema, you said when integrating, what do you think about? Was that kind of the gist of your question?
Yeah, it's really about integrating systems as teams grow. There's going to be systems that might be duplicated. So really, what are you guys looking at when you're evaluating different systems that might be brought into your shops? Which ones do you pick? What do you do with them? Do you try to integrate them together? Do you just get rid of one? What do you do?
Okay, I'll throw that out and say that that's an interesting question. Now, Michael, you talked about this earlier. You don't really throw things out, do you?
Well, we do eventually. All of these systems have to be updated, and we're always trying to make them more integrated. So for instance, if you look at our contracts and rights management, we do a contract with an MGM studio, for instance, and there's an ATSC 1.0 component, an ATSC 3.0 component, there's an OTT component, there's stuff we can show syndicated content within the DMA where we have a station, there's stuff we can't. So there's many, many rules for all the different distribution channels that we have to keep in place. And for things like that, it's really important to have one system where all that information is, and if you have multiple systems that were brought into acquisitions or whatever the case may be, that they can tie in, hopefully something better than a human copying things back and forth between them, but that you have an integration there.
And of course, I mean, as data becomes more important, that's incredibly valid to make sure that things are talking between systems. And I won't say that you don't throw things out, but what I meant is that you're building on some of the legacy systems you have, but you're always building new things as well. So I don't want to imply that anybody here we're sticking them in the never funnel, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of other people's responses to this, Darren, do you have comments in terms of, when integrating, what do you think about?
The integration kind of analysis that we do whenever we step into a new customer goes back to the workflow, right? It's about how the content is originated and ultimately how it needs to be delivered and everything in between, right? So for us, as the entity often coming in and being integrated with existing workflows, the things we think about are looking at existing workflows, looking at how it works today, trying to disrupt that workflow as little as possible, trying to reduce duplication of effort wherever possible. We don't want to have to recreate an entirely new workflow for something that's maybe already working. So for us, the big things we think about are how do we best plug into an existing system without causing additional work or additional disruption. And for us, that means being flexible. It means having both UIs and APIs that can be automated and kind of done seamlessly in terms of the integration, and ultimately starting with the customer needs and what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, Yeah, and I think that each one of these conversations could actually be a very long one. But I'm going to jump over to Geir and say, Geir, what about you? What do you think about the integration? And
with us, our integrations these days tend to be really with new content providers, right? We're getting either new linear channels in. Usually they come with VOD. Those tend to be pretty straightforward because our workflows, we've over the last 2 years or so standardized into things that just tend to work, because there has been a set of general practices in the industry long before we were here. Very often there's integration with data for like SCUDdy data, and that is fairly straightforward. You're calling somebody's API. Nobody responds in exactly the same way. So the teams are pretty good at ensuring that we can integrate with, really scalability, make sure it's not too bespoke work specifically for the provider, and make sure that it just fits into the platform that we have.
Okay. And you said things are working. I don't know, for some reason the skeptic in me says, really?
It was before I got on the panel. So, I mean, I don't know where it is now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
We won't hold you too long here because we don't want things to fall apart. Okay, I'll get back to you in a second. In fact, Michael, you have a question, and then I'm going to get back to having Geir answer as the order of operations here. So, Michael, you had a question about for the group.
Yeah, my question was, how do we ensure that our platforms are open so that, as we're taking on new challenges, new distribution channels, or even new, products and companies that they can integrate into our underlying platform?
Okay. All right. And Geir, I'm going to have you answer first because I think I left you off one of the questions earlier. So what is your comments on that?
I mean, it's interesting because, someday I guess we will be integrating, other companies, right? But we're still pretty small organization, not doing that yet. We spend a lot of time ensuring that our architecture, because we write a lot of it, right? A lot of our infrastructure, a lot of our distribution system is really custom and bespoke. Now, of course, we don't write the encoder. We have an infrastructure to manage that, but it's all automated. All the way out, we write our apps. Everything between the encoder to the app is ours. We're always thinking about sort of ensuring that you don't take too many shortcuts. It does happen, but making sure that you have a design and an architecture that's thinking forward, at least to some bit, right? I mean, you can't see too far in the future. Then you're just doing speculative engineering, but we pay attention to what's going on in the larger universe and make sure that at least we've thought about it as we're taking steps forward with new things.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, Magnus, how about you? Your comments on this?
I would say that if you're going with integration, I would say that be careful and then pick friends around you, so to say. So if you want to replace a component, pick another component that's worked before. Don't be a guinea pig here, and try to use open interfaces instead of proprietary interfaces. So most of the vendors have partners and pre-integrated components surrounding them. And I would say that one of the good advice here is to use those partners and pre-integrations instead of trying to be the guinea pig, trying to invent some, especially if you're going with proprietary interfaces.
Okay.
Then it's usually really scary to go that way. And if you go with more mature standardized protocols and interfaces, you're open, and then it's a safer bet.
Okay, so partners, definitely think about partners is the one thing I pulled out of this comment. Now, Rema, how about you? You have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, really, really similar to what Geir was saying. I think, when you're looking at all these pieces, it's really important to have a very modular architecture so that you can kind of plug and play certain things. Not all things can be plugged in, not all things can be integrated well. You'll find that sometimes your engineering teams might kill you and say, hey, what is this? Why did you pick this? Hopefully you're working really nicely with them. But I think that one of the benefits of using a modular architecture is that, if there's a certain piece, you can take that out, you can plug it in with something else. And the other thing is, you know, as you're evaluating things where you want to build that internally or buy, a lot of these vendors have things that are, it's the same tooling under the hood for the most part. And so, you know, some of those challenges are just, is the documentation available for you? Is it easy to understand? I think Magnus was saying something like, you know, make sure that this is a well-known system, make sure that it integrates with the rest of your system. For our engineering teams here at FandangoNOW, I think we're constantly testing out whether or not we should continue to build everything in-house or have certain external pieces. Even just recently, actually, we were evaluating something and, you know, it didn't work out. So I think that integrating is not the easiest thing, but I never want to lock myself into a system that I can't get out of because things are changing all the time.
Okay, I want to put you on the spot a little bit for a second here. Is there a reasonable test period that you think you need in order to figure out whether something works?
Yeah, this is definitely a tolerance question. You know, in your organizations, depending on the needs of, again, the content, you might be able to evaluate things for a few months, or in certain situations that might be a few weeks. Sometimes it could be a few days. So
Okay.
I don't think there's a one size fits all when it comes to the time frame. I think it's just, you know, it really depends on you and what you're delivering and what your time to market expectations are. You know, if that's really tight, if you have a really, really short time frame and you're, let's say you're launching, I heard someone ask about launching a new OTT app on Roku or Amazon Fire. You know, if you know, you don't really have a deadline there, maybe you have some time to test some things out. But if you're itching to get onto the market, you know, you try something and it doesn't work out, you know, change. There's a plethora of different tools out there, a lot of different partners that you can work with to kind of get the job done. And if not, you know, then reevaluate. Maybe you need to build that in-house. There's no timeline here.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. Okay. All right. I just thought I'd ask you. All right. I'm going to jump to the next question here. Magnus, you had your question to the group was?
It's a little bit selfish question in order for me to prepare to see where the market is going. So I would like to understand, what are the biggest challenges you see the coming year?
Okay. All right. And the interesting thing here is that I'm sure each person here has a number of answers. Darren, I'm going to kind of jump to you first on this one and say, what do you think is one of the challenges that's facing you?
Yeah, so our challenges are typically our customers' challenges. So when I think about the things that Michael and Geir are going through with, you know, the loss of live sporting events due to the pandemic, and certainly the kind of changes in behavior of consumers, maybe shifting more towards SVOD services. You know, for the remainder of the year, our biggest challenge is going to be, you know, how do we support our customers when live sports returns, when live events return to, you know, whatever we call this new normal, right? So I'm 100% confident that we will get back to a normal state. I think there will be, you know, we've already seen some green shoots of sports leagues restarting in Europe. You know, there's some big announcements coming around NBA, NFL, MLB here in North America. So for us, it's really our challenge is to kind of maintain the current level of service for our customers, because in general, everything's up, like traffic is up, video streaming is up. And then, you know, when live events return, we don't expect everything else to decline. We think it will be additive to what's happening. So for us, that means, you know, preparing to, you know, be running multiple live events during one day. We're expecting, you know, peak traffic across the internet to continue. So we'll continue to invest in our network capacity and network quality, and ultimately to ensure that, you know, when things come back, that everybody has the opportunity to capture on the consumer interest around live sports and ultimately translate that into subscription or advertising dollars.
Okay. All right, of course that's important. And in fact, the monetization side, we haven't even touched on, but I think I'm going to jump over to Geir because I want to make sure that we get everyone's kind of focus on this. Geir, your challenges, are they similar? Or are they different?
They're very similar. I mean, we're a sports first, come for the sports, stay for the entertainment offering. So the lack of sports or the cessation of sports has been interesting for us. We have seen an increase in consumption, right? Because people are home now and they need to consume news certainly and pay attention to what's going on. And then also with the entertainment offerings, they're just using it to spend time.
Right.
So I think going forward, we are going to see sports come back. We are starting to see it. You've got Bundesliga has started already. La Liga, I guess, is starting next week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming back, right? I'm fully optimistic. It will be back. It may be different. Certainly weird to watch a soccer game in an empty stadium, but we'll sort it out. And then as a business, we're constantly focused on making always a better consumer experience. And then we recently have become a public company. So that brings a set of challenges that as a private company we didn't have,
Right.
but that's going to be our focus also. And, increasing subscriber growth, increasing our margins and usual stuff.
Now, in fact, because sports is coming online, is there anything special that you're thinking about since you're the new content? In that you are you are getting refreshed.
So the thing that keeps me up a little bit and is because of the growth of OTT in the last couple of months, we are starting to see some of the national distribution infrastructure getting a bit stretched. So as we get even more content with more viewership, more simultaneous viewership, which is what happens with sports, we're paying very close attention to this to make sure that we can deliver that good experience that people are looking for.
Okay. All right. So Michael, you're also you're developing kind of ongoing new content, although I'm not sure I'd consider it entertaining. How about you? Any comments on this?
I think the Chicago Cubs are very entertaining, but in a way. So you got to remember, sports is more than half of our business now.
Right.
While news is the other half. And both of those, like Geir said, they're temporal and everyone watches them at the same time. It's very timely delivery of content. But our biggest challenges are really technical challenges for this year. On our sports side, since we just acquired those from Disney, we have to replace all of those their complete infrastructure with IP-based video origination distribution. We're doing the same thing for all of our 200 TV stations for over the air, making that all IP-based into cloud-based. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we have our next-gen TV transition that's going on, which started a couple weeks ago. And that will go on for the next 2 years.
Okay.
So that's what we're concentrating on.
Now, in fact, I'm going to get back to that in just one moment because we've also got a question coming in. I'll tie that all back. But Rema, do you have some comments on this about what you're thinking about? I mean, as you're in kind of a slightly different format in terms of you're a more on-demand focus.
Yeah, we're definitely more on demand. And I think, what I would say on this, I think you just have to be ready to adapt to different challenges,
Okay.
You just have to be ready to pivot whenever.
You probably think about that when you're hiring, don't you? How flexible someone is.
I mean, I think as an engineer, your job is to solve problems. Mm-hmm. No matter what kind of problem comes your way. And I think we apply that to workflows, we apply that to technology, we apply that to the platforms that we build and support. So yeah, you always have to be flexible.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try to rush this other question. We're at the top of the hour. we can go a little bit longer. The question is really that the one that Michael brought up, which is what's important to think about as TV and digital workflows converge. We also had a question from the audience who said, what do you think about in terms of your formats and your transport? So does anybody here want to kind of jump in on this? Rema, I don't know if this is something you want to start with, but they're talking about really, how do you think about, are you going CMAF? How do you think about your actual transport of your content?
Yeah, so this is this is really specific to the different types of devices that you support, and then also the technology that you have available to you. So, I mentioned earlier that we are on a bunch of different OTT platforms, and so I think it's really just looking at like what's supported there, and then also too, if you are supporting a bunch of different platforms, you're looking at the similarities between what all those different clients expect, and seeing if maybe there's a format that would work across. Let's say you have to support 10 different OTT platforms. Maybe there's a format that works for 6 or 7 of those. And the others are something unique. I really don't think there is a choice here. It really just depends on where you're trying to be. For FandangoNOW, we have to support all of this. There's really no choice in the matter. If we want to be on this platform, you kind of have to do this. And so I guess the question really is, where do you want to be? What are the requirements for being on that platform? And do you have the technology available to make that format using whatever transcoders or packagers you have available to you?
Okay. Magnus, and again, I'm trying to make sure we get some answers, but we also try to keep on time here. Magnus, so, as you're thinking about more of the TV and digital convergence and formats especially, is there anything you tell your customers?
Again, it depends a lot on where you come from and what legacy you have, and as Rema said, what type of devices you want to try to reach. I would say try to start as small as possible and go from there. I would say definitely CMAF. CMAF is definitely the way to go, but of course there are devices that won't support that, but maybe you can live without those. If you're not into DRM and you don't require DRM in the beginning, maybe you start with HLS only and go from there and expand. But you can do this as complicated as you want. You can add different codecs, you can do multi-codec, you can do multi-protocol, you can do multi-DRM, you can do a lot of these to make things very complicated. So I would say start from where you are with your business and start small and expand instead of trying to reach everything from the beginning.
Okay. Michael, I know you've got a bunch of stuff to say on this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so we have a broadcast app that's being transmitted over the air right now that does converge broadcast and digital. And within that broadcast app, the over-the-air signal is, a mixture of MPEG, MMT with SHVC. There's some route dash channels. And the digital stuff within Sinclair tends to be HLS because we need it to work on Roku, right? And so, Magnus is right. If you're starting out, start out small, because to bite off something as complex as what we're doing, we've been working on this for years. And it is complex. We have vendors and TV manufacturers that have trouble keeping up, for instance.
So it's really the management of everything and trying to coordinate, knowing where everything is, it sounds like.
Yeah, management with the CEs, manage with the CE manufacturers, management with your vendors, and you pick up the slack with your own development teams.
All right, Darren, I'm going to pick you right now just to jump in on this. I know you've got stuff to say too.
I really don't. There's no easy answer to this question. There's so many moving parts here. There's no one answer. There's no one silver bullet of CMAP versus something else, right? So it's really just a conversation you need to have around your business objectives and your kind of current workflows.
Great. I love hearing that from somebody. There is really, in fact, even though with all of us here, we're talking about our answers, another group of people would have a whole nother bunch of answers, right? These conversations are so specific to the individuals.
Correct.
I think that Geir, we got to get you in here. Your comments, either on.
I mean, not different at all, right? It's a complicated, the world's a complicated place, and the constraints are put upon you by others. If you want to get out there and reach the popular consumer electronic devices, we do Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, Android TV, Smart TV, Xbox, you name it. And we're small, we don't have a lot of leverage. So when a TV manufacturer's player doesn't do the right thing with respect to a spec, there's nothing we can do except just make it work. So be prepared if you're going to go that broad. It's going to get.
Okay, stay here. I have one more question. We're going to you've got really short answers here. If 99% of your customers have legacy technology, maybe not you because you are digital first, what advice do you give them when you think about the future? Or if I've stumped you, I can move on to someone else.
My customers are consumers, right?
They are, yes.
So the legacy technology may be old devices. They don't ask us, so.
Interesting. So they're doing stuff that you just don't know about.
Well,
realistically,
no.
In terms of equipment.
We have to develop to what they have. If they have, say, an older Roku device, we either make the decision that our app will work on it, or we have to say, I'm sorry, it won't, because it just doesn't have enough memory or horsepower to do what it needs to do.
All right, all right. Darren, how about you? Quick answer here on this one. This is your question, actually.
Yeah. So the answer is do no harm, right? If customers of ours have legacy infrastructure, when you think about the future, first try to work within the existing system as best as possible, and then slowly kind of phase out different components as they end of life or as you start to launch new services. Okay,
we're almost towards the end of life of this session here. Rema, we'll quickly jump to you.
Yeah, real quick. So, if 99% of your users are on legacy platforms, if you want to stay in business, you need to continue to support those legacy platforms, just hands down. Mm-hmm. There are techniques that you can do, and maybe build some interfaces that stay the same for those legacy platforms, and you can modernize and kind of build a facade layer in between so that you can modernize different parts of your platform while still making things work for those legacy platforms. But you got to make sure those things continue to work. You got to keep making money.
All right, all right. I bet that's a challenge sometimes with younger developers, that they want to kind of try new and different things.
Yes, and you just politely pull them back. That's it.
Okay.
Or impolitely.
Or impolitely. Okay, all right. So, what about you, Magnus? What are you thinking? Are people treating you politely or impolitely when you're? I
would say that you sometimes need to start cutting devices and starting cutting the legacy support as well. Otherwise, you'll drown in verification. You'll hinder yourself when it comes to new development because the older devices won't support it. So I would say the opposite sometimes. That sometimes you need to start cutting the legacy support.
Okay,
I totally agree with that. This is, again, it's really where your users are. But yes, there is going to be a cost problem to continuing to support the legacy devices as things move on. So, it starts to become way more expensive than the revenue that you're getting from those older devices. So always got to keep evaluating.
Okay. All right. Michael, have any thoughts here?
Well, really just to reiterate what Rema and Magnus said, you do have to stay where your customers are, but you cannot, that's a strong word. It is expensive to support hundreds of different devices if they're truly different. So you have, we're cutting all the time.
All right.
Different OSs, things like that.
Okay, we are over time, and I want to thank everybody. We have the ability to run a few minutes late, but realistically, we do have to let these people get back to work. And I want to thank everybody who has been on the panel and the audience. Great conversation. I'm sure we could spend more time on this. In terms of even wrapping it up, there are so many things we covered. All I can say is we're going to have it on VOD. Come on back and take a look at it for a second time. Thank you all. And I hope you're all safe and sound, and take care, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.